everyone, this is Pico Entertainment and we are back again, and here now we have another video for you, and this will be the latest in our movie face-offs, where I'll look at two movies of a similar genre, subject matter or release date, and have a debate and comparison as to which one is the superior film. So in this edition we will focus on possibly the greatest cultural fictional hero, and that is of course James Bond, and focus on the two installments in GoldenEye and Casino Royale. Released on the 24th of November 1995, GoldenEye saw the back then unknown Irish actor Pierce Brosnan make his debut as 007 in a back then big budget comeback of the franchise, starring alongside Sean Bean, Famke Janssen and also Judi Dench. Arriving much later in 17th of November 2006, Casino Royale also saw the debut interpretation of Daniel Craig in a deliberate more grounded take after a 4-year absence for the franchise, this time starring alongside Eva Green, Mads Mikkelsen, Jeffrey Wright and Judi Dench. Coincidentally directed by Martin Campbell, both films at their release date were tasked with reinvigorating Bond as a character and an IP for contemporary audiences. So when looking back on both films, which one proved to be the most successful in the rebooting of the character and showcasing the most iconic representation of this hero that has endured audiences within cinema for more than 60 years? Well, we'll compare both movies first in terms of story, and I'll probably give the mark here to Casino Royale, which I think is just a bit more polished and sophisticated in terms of its storytelling. The concept of a Bond origin, or Bond in his early years, does allow for some development in terms of his journey and also his relationship with Vesper, which is established halfway through. Now GoldenEye is pretty much your standard James Bond story, which, just to be clear, is not a bad thing, and I'll expand on that later on. We have the typical world-destroying weapon here taught GoldenEye that Bond must prevent terrorists from using to their own devices, and the movie may also come across a bit dated due to its Cold War origins and overtones, the Soviets being the antagonists once more. There is an interesting twist in terms of Sean Bean's 006 agent, but it's nothing groundbreaking, but as an overall story it functions fine enough. We then look at the element of action, and I think we have to give the mark here to GoldenEye. Yes, no doubt about it, Casino Royale has a fantastic 10-minute barnstorming sequence where we see Bond pursuing the bomb maker, very much typifying Daniel Craig's more pure physical interpretation, as we see him barging through walls and driving through trucks, leaping onto cranes and scaffolding. It really has that vivid, colourful energy, and it's probably the most escapist sequence of the entire film, and it's absolutely fantastic to watch, but sadly nothing else afterwards quite comes close in matching this sequence in terms of overall excitement. Despite coming out almost 10 years before, GoldenEye in quantity has far more action, very large scale and spectacular, everything that you'd want to see and expect from a Bond movie. We only have to look at the opening sequence of Bond's jaw-dropping bungee jump from the Contra Dam. We equally have the outrageous though completely implausible leap from the motorbike off a cliff, free falling onto a plane. And of course we have to mention the crazy tank chase through the streets of St. Petersburg. And all of these sequences are, for what many Bond fans will tell you, are amongst the most iconic sequences throughout the entire movie franchise. So yes, in this element, GoldenEye definitely has to take the mark here. We then look at the role of the villain, which should always be a prominent part of any Bond movie, and in this part we have to give it to Casino Royale. Now Mads Mikkelsen's Le Chiffre isn't amongst the top tier of Bond villains, but he has much more presence and interplay with Bond here. I absolutely love all of the card game sequences where we see Bond and the Chiffre take part in very much a battle of wits, and it's absolutely great to watch. Now in terms of GoldenEye, we have Sean Bean's former agent turned traitor, wanting to get revenge for how his parents were treated, and minus one scene where he reveals himself to Bond in terms of his overall ambitions, there really isn't that much of a distinctive nature or dynamic towards this character. We then talk about another vital ingredient of any Bond film, and that is of course the Bond girl. Well, let's make no mistake here, Eva Green just in general is one of the stunning, most sexiest actresses within the industry, and as Vesper in Casino Royale, she definitely represents one of the classiest and most sophisticated Bond girls. She's every bit the match and equal of Bond, and again the emotional relationship between the two adds a certain depth and somewhat compassion to the character before we see her overall true ambitions and nature within the final climax. But for all of the beauty of Eva Green, you simply can't deny Famke Janssen's Xena Sonatop. While still villainous, you can easily class her as a Bond girl, and what a force of nature she truly is. She's the absolute element of sexual deviance and intensity, and she captures your attention every time she appears on the screen, relishing every bit of violence and kills that she makes, whether it's through weapons or indeed her body and sexual ability. and she was every bit the iconic femme fatale for that era, and definitely one of the most impressionable Bond girls within all of the entire franchise. We then talk about characterization and the portrayal of the Bond image, and in terms of GoldenEye, Pierce Brosnan is every bit the iconic interpretation. He has the confidence, the swagger, the one-liners and the smoothness, and he 100% looks like what James Bond should look like, and he just plays it so effortlessly and is such a natural fit for the character. We then look at Daniel Craig, which on the one hand you could say as a character has far more of a journey and a progression as we see his overall development in the role as 007, something that you always will get in an origin story. He has that bruising physicality which was by design, very much taking inspiration from the Jason Bourne films. There is that stoic nature, and yes, you could argue that there is much more of an emotional core, again centering on a relationship with Vesper that we see throughout this film. But this take here is very much a deconstruction, which at times is at odds with what James Bond should be. This version there is far less charm, less swagger and less adventure, and therefore the character can be less watchable and appealing as a result. Now this may not have been as apparent in Casino Royale, but it was definitely something that was far more noticeable throughout the other Craig movies. It's still a very good performance within the role, but it's nowhere near as iconic as what the Pierce Brosnan version was. We then talk about another special ingredient within the Bond franchise, and that is of course the theme tune, and in this department this could very well be a tie. We have GoldenEye sung by the legendary Tina Turner, which is every bit that classic big ballad with those big vocals and tones, right up there with the best Shirley Bassey songs, and it's just a perfect fit for iconic James Bond. We then look at Casino Royale, which had Chris O'Connell's You Know My Name, which is far less renowned but is a real rocking upbeat tune and something that we really haven't had since this overall release, and it's very refreshing to hear when you go over all of the Bond musical themes, especially when we look at the recent Daniel Craig installments, and they certainly lack the certain energy and intensity of what we saw within this track for this overall movie. So we then go on to the box office, and both films are massive hits, very much bringing Bond back as a character to mainstream relevance and prominence. Now in terms of GoldenEye, it grossed over $350 million from a back then very small $60 million budget, making over 5 times its cost. It went on to become one of the biggest hits of the year. Casino Royale also proved to be very successful, making over $616 million on a budget of around $102 to $150 million. And it was actually at the time the most successful Bond installment without adjusting for inflation, and overall going to be within the top 10 biggest hits of 2006. We'll then talk about impact and legacy, and I think in this area we have to give it here to GoldenEye. Yes, Casino Royale did very well to prove all the doubters wrong over Daniel Craig, firmly establishing him as the right 007 for the current times. Financially, his run went on to become the most successful of the franchise, where we'd see the third entry, Skyfall in 2012, become the first Bond film to gross over $1 billion. And I think generally Casino Royale is agreed by a lot of Bond fans to be the best within Craig's run, and I fully agree with that. But if you ask most Bond fans, GoldenEye would be seen as having the greater impact, reviving the franchise massively after the underperformance of License to Kill. Once more, it has the bigger, more iconic action sequences and stunts. Prior to Daniel Craig, Pierce Brosnan would also have the most successful run within the franchise, and the movie's legacy was enhanced even further in terms of the video game for the N64, which we all have fond memories of playing back in the day, and it still perhaps remains the most famous computer game surrounding the character. And I think overall in terms of summary, I'd probably say that Casino Royale is the all-round better movie in terms of story, cinematography, direction and editing, but GoldenEye is every bit the far more iconic classic James Bond adventure, with the big stunts, all of the one-liners, all of the action. It's very much what you would want for James Bond in terms of those classic movie elements. And whilst Casino Royale is the superior film, if I had a choice overall to watch one again, I would probably go for GoldenEye, and that's why I think it's overall the most iconic out of the 2 Bond installments. So there's my overall thoughts and feelings when drawing comparison to both GoldenEye and Casino Royale, 2 very big budget successful rebooting of the famous character. Let me know what you think in the comments below. And if you have any other further movies or television series or any other topics within the pop entertainment and culture scene that you'd like to see me cover, then also let me know within the comments, and I will see if I can provide further commentary for you on that subject matter within the future. Please also hit like the subscription and notification buttons so I can provide you with more high quality content like this in the future. But that's it for now. Take care of yourselves, and I will see you very, very soon.